This is Take a Cue, Season 2, Episode 13.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Season 2 of Take a Cue. I'm Jen Wise, 4th and 5th grade instrumental music teacher.
And I'm Erik Donough, 8th grade band and jazz band director.
We are two veteran educators with over 35 years of experience teaching music in New Jersey public schools between the two of us, and we're excited to bring teaching experiences and insights to you.
So excited! Whether you're just starting out in your teaching career or you've been teaching longer than we have, this show will help you to grow with new ideas and perspectives about music education and teaching.
We hope you'll be just as inspired as we are every time you listen. Before we begin, if you enjoy our podcast, please help us out by doing a few super easy things.
First, subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
Then make sure you rate the podcast and leave a review.
It helps people find our show who haven't yet, and we really appreciate it.
If you find that you get a lot out of our episodes, we'd be grateful if you considered becoming a monthly supporter to help us grow the podcast.
You can sign up to make a secure monthly payment using the link in our show notes or on our Spotify for Podcasters site.
Also, if you have questions or comments about anything you hear on the episode, come and interact with us on social media. We are Take a Cue Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Oh yeah. Jen, I'm getting in the mood.
I know, me too. I'm airdropping on everything. My coffee cup, my laptop, my microphone.
I have talked more percussion in the last hour than I probably have talked in the last month.
Oh yeah, me too. And
it's a good thing.
It totally is. We got really deep into it with Rick Gray. He's got so much to say about what we should be doing with our beginning percussionists, and I really got to sleep on this one because it's flipping my perspective on a few things for sure. So
Rick had some great thoughts, a lot of information about starting kids off, his method for how he begins his percussionists. Mm-hmm. And look, there's probably many different ideas out there on ways to start off your percussionist, but I know Rick is very passionate about his method, and I think if anybody takes away even a percentage of what mm-hmm. Rick said today on our podcast, I think your percussion section is going to end up so much better and so much better prepared and better musicians.
They're really going to benefit from this one. There's a lot in here. So let's get to meet Rick Gray in the next episode of our Starting Off Right series.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. So welcome, Rick. Welcome to Take a Cue. This is so cool. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. This
is
good.
This is good. This is the episode that is like, if you're not a percussionist, everybody's kind of wondering what we're going to talk about, what we're going to do. How do we make great percussionists?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And considering what I have to offer, percussion is like sort of a band director's superpower if you're a percussionist, because there's just so much to get involved with. That's not written in the books.
So speaking of that, how did you get your superpowers? You want to tell us a little bit about your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
All right, so I just retired from public school band directing after 32 official years in public schools. However, throughout my college days at Rutgers, I was working with marching bands, a number of them, back in the mid to late 80s. I was even actually working with marching bands in my junior and senior year in high school as well. I had the opportunity to march with a couple of fine drum corps back when I was in high school, something that doesn't really happen much these days. And I just fell in love with designing for marching band and just teaching in general. So I was actually an engineering major my first year at Rutgers, and then I said, you know what? Having much more fun going out and teaching the bands in the fall than...
I don't need that paycheck.
That's right. Who cares about money? I just need to enjoy my life. But anyway, it was the right move. And I retired a couple years ago, and I found a wonderful job teaching at a local private school. And again, I was taught mostly for those 32 years middle school, 7th and 8th grade band in a regional district where I got whatever was sent to me from our 4 sending districts. So in some ways I had to pull everybody together. So I kind of started from scratch with that understanding. Now, luckily, I had a combined 7th and 8th grade group, usually averaged around 80 members, split between both grades, and it was a great opportunity for the older kids to mentor the new kids coming in, either those kids that were from their sending district or what have you. So I considered my 8th graders teachers just as much as I considered myself in many instances. So yeah, but now I'm teaching elementary school. I was given the task of teaching 3rd through 5th graders instrumental music.
Wow, 3rd graders. Okay.
Yeah. But what I decided to do was I started off my first year there focusing on the 4th and 5th graders, all as beginners. And then halfway through the year, I started 3rd graders on recorder. So that's pretty much the way I did the second year as well. We started a little earlier with the recorder.
Got it.
It's great.
Great.
So they're not actually playing band instruments until 4th grade.
Correct.
Okay. But they were before you were there, which is wild. I mean, some instruments and some kids, I guess you can start in 3rd grade, but wow, a lot of them just aren't ready yet.
Yeah, no, they're really not. And again, the recorder, as you know, it's just a perfect segue into band instruments. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So
you guys want to talk about beginning percussionists. So let's talk about just...
Oh, yes.
And again, I know you guys all have beginning band experience, and many people out there do. And again, I've just come to this Zen moment where, when you introduce the instruments and, it's the Harry Potter sorting hat moment, the instrument will generally choose the kid. And we are like... We know what the sorting hat is saying, yet the kids really want to push it sometimes based on what the instrument looks like. So I always tell them, listen, the instrument looks like one thing, but it sounds like another thing. So you need to talk this over with your family because you're going to hear this instrument a lot. Okay, you can see it and it's done, but you're going to develop your tone and you're going to be singing through this instrument. So you need to decide what you're not going to be sick of after a while. Same thing with your family and your family pets. So
I know you probably get a lot of percussionists or a lot of kids who want to play percussion who go, well, I made a sound on this instrument because I hit it. Right. And therefore I should be in percussion. And you get a lot of parents who say the same thing. Oh, my kid loves to bang on the pots and pans. They should be a percussionist. So how do you sort of guide the kids to the right place, the right instrument?
Well, first of all, it's even worse when last year, in my first year, I did a bucket drumming piece. So, that was the big highlight with stick clicks inside the bucket and everything. Everybody loved that. So, everybody wanted to be a drummer. So, I said to them, well, maybe I'll do a special activity for anybody who joins the band. They can play on a bucket drumming piece with us. But you don't have to be a percussionist, right? So, that's the way I kind of steered that away. But then, as we all do, it's 50% marketing, right? So it's all sales. You just got to say, hey, oh my gosh, you're so good at reading the notes on the staff. That's awesome. Look the way you put those fingers down. You covered those holes. I mean, that's great. So
not really, anybody can do that.
No, it really is all sales. But then again, you really have to honor the kids, that want to be drummers. I know that when I was a kid, somebody said, I want you to play the saxophone and not the drums. I'm like, maybe I don't want to be in the band. Because my brother was a guitar player. I became a drummer because the gentleman down the street was a drummer and gave me lessons. So you really do have to honor the kid and say, all right, you want to be a drummer? That's great. You got to commit to it. I also find that a lot of my drummers are the more athletic kids, that need to get a lot of energy out. They tend to gravitate to that. So again, and that's great because, the band is a mix of all types of kids. It's the only activity like that, boys and girls, doesn't matter. Everybody's part of the team. So
All right, so us old farts, we can decry, the kids these days. But the good news is they're still signing up for band.
Absolutely.
And that's a great thing. Sometimes more so than ever. At least I know that's been the case where we are. We're getting more kids than we've had in a long time. So you get kids, they want to play percussion, they're excited. You know, you've the sorting hat has done its job. And so where do we start with percussion? Because like in my mind, it's always been like those kids are learning two separate instruments, whereas the flutes are learning flute and the clarinets are learning clarinet. Percussionists have to learn snare, which is also auxiliary and bass drum and all that stuff, and then they have to learn mallets. So for me, it's always like I need twice as much time to be able to teach percussion than I do for any other instrument. How do you start it? What is the Rick Fitzke method for percussion, like beginning percussion?
For most of us in the Jersey area, you know, we have our beginning bands are combined 4th and 5th graders, right? So that means 2 different grade levels. So the first year for me is really concentrated on rhythmic reading, okay? And sticks and grip, stick control and grip. So what I suggest that you set up with your vendors is you get a pad with a stand and a pair of sticks. That's it. Okay, I in order to participate with some of the ensemble selections when we meet as a full group, I'll have them get the book, or maybe they can use one of my books in the meantime, but we really don't work with the book. I find that every book that I've worked with, I'm not going to mention names, but there are even some special percussion books out there, just move at a snail's pace, and that just eats up all of your time. So I have this cut to the chase method of introducing rhythms and grip and technique exercises. So I have this one thing called hand to hand exercises. It's just one page, and basically it's 8 sticks together. This exercise is called mirror mirror. I do 8 strokes together, 8 rights, 8 strokes together, 8 lefts, and we just do that on a loop. Okay, and we just focus on the wrist action. We focus on the fulcrum, where they're grabbing the sticks, counting.
Do you have a metronome going or something behind them as they do it, or
Absolutely.
Are you the metronome?
I've got my smartboard up with a empty Google web page where I just type in metronome so that they know that they can go anywhere and get a metronome. I also have a list of songs on a playlist that are various tempos and in 4s so that they can count to that and feel like they're really listening and being a part of the moment. And so that's really cool. And again, the first exercise, I love using double stops because it's all about mirroring the grip from right to left.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Rick. I had a quick question. Before they even play a note, how much detail do you go into as far as grip, pad height, all of that stuff? Like, could we step back even further before the notes?
Oh, sure.
And just talk about, like, how do we hold the sticks?
Yep.
Where do we position our snare pad? All that stuff. I want to go into it, like, right from the first moment.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. And I saw one of the questions was, what kind of stick do you use? Okay. And honestly, I know a lot of people tend to get thicker sticks, but I generally like a 5B. Okay, a 5B stick. The same way that a saxophone, an alto, is still too big for a 4th grader. Okay. And that's why we have them play it on the side, so they're not always hitting all the side keys, right? It's the same thing. If that stick is too big, it's going to be a problem. So a 5B is good. Even a 5A. Some people use 7As, but a 2B is almost too big. 2B is actually also too big for a drum itself. I mean, that's a loud stick, a big, heavy stick. I remember when I started learning when I was in 5th grade, my teacher got me these Regal Tip silhouettes. They may have been 1/4 of an inch thick. It was crazy, but it was just promoted gripping the stick in the right way. The stick is too big, the kids tend to grab them like baseball bats or clubs, and the thumb slips underneath them, and it's just a mess. So again, it's all about the pinch, the fulcrum. I tell them to make a little cross between their thumb and the first crease in their index finger, like a little cross. Okay, keeping the knuckles up. I also tell them about the angle of the pointer finger. If you point okay, that muscle runs all the way up your arm. So that's got to be in total alignment as you're playing. Otherwise, if you twist or bend, okay, it doesn't work with the musculature, right? So you want to stay as loose as possible when you're playing. Pad height also is really interesting. I always tell them to set their pad, for starters, around wristwatch height. Okay, so if they had a watch on their arm, they would adjust the pad to about that height. If everybody listening could just do this, just stick your hand out straight and flat, okay? And then all of a sudden, just put your thumb and your index finger together. You'll notice that your hand bends up, right? Your hand goes from flat to all of a sudden it bends up a little bit. So that's got to be parallel to the ground, or parallel to the pad. Whenever you strike a drum or a keyboard, you want that stick or mallet parallel to the head, playing surface.
We're talking not forearm, but back of the hand. Parallel.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it.
And it's really interesting because sometimes when you play on an angle down, you just get this really wonky tip sound. Okay, and again, if it's too high up, they're cracking the rims. So yeah, there's the Goldilocks moment there where you'll find it. All right, so for me, the most important thing is the technique and concentration and rehearsal technique. So I told you about the mirror, I call it. Okay, where they play both hands and then single hands, both hands, single hand. We do that over and over. They're focused on the sound they're making and what they look like. It has nothing to do with reading. Again, same way we learn language as children, we don't get involved with reading until many years later. So again, for me, making music it starts with oral. It doesn't matter what instrument it is, just making good sounds. So we do that. The second exercise I introduced to them is called a countdown, or the countdown, where they play 8 on a hand, 8 on the other hand, 7 on the hand, 7 on the other hand, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that gets them focused on concentration and listening to each other, counting out loud, okay? Not, straight singular digits without any subdivisions. So that's good. And then I do a little mixed meter thing called Rocket Band, which is 4 on a hand, 3 on a hand, and then 2 on one hand, and then it alternates to the other hand. 4 on the left hand, 4 on the right hand, 3, and then it alternates back to the other hand. So that we work on being a little ambidextrous at the time.
What do we want to see in our kids, and what are some of the pitfalls that we are looking to avoid when we look at kids? What are some of the things that you see that you know you need to fix right away?
Usually with the grip, again, they're trying to grip the thumb underneath the stick and not keeping the thumb on top. Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that, the way everybody does speaks with their hand, and making the little mouth with their thumb and their index finger. Well, you want that mouth to be closed all the time. So you want to keep those fingers tight all together. With a stick, with your Vic Firth sticks, you'll notice that there's a flag on the stick where the fulcrum should go. Okay, so you want to make sure that thumb is up on that flag. Okay, if the thumb tends to go underneath the flag, okay, the stick they'll either choke up on the stick or pull back on the stick. They've got to hold on really tight. Couple of different thoughts about fingers. A lot of the kids like to let the fingers go. Some kids hold on too tight. But in the beginning here, it's just about keeping the fingers around the stick and just moving the wrists as naturally as possible. I am very big on talking to them about handshakes. How do you shake a hand, or how do you bounce a ball? Okay, bouncing a ball is a great analogy because you have to push energy into the ball to get it to come right back up to your hand. And it's the same thing with drumming almost. Okay, Buddy Rich has this famous quote about, being a really great drummer is just about controlling the rebound, because the stick's already in motion and it's just going to stay in motion until you do something different. That's why he was able to get some wicked single-handed stuff happening. If you're holding the stick the right way, there should be a space between the index finger and the middle finger, okay, because the fingers are reaching back. Ultimately, you'll get to a point where you do little wings with the kids where you hold the fulcrum and then the other 3 fingers just bounce up and down in their palms, and that'll get them to use their fingers a little bit better. I always like to introduce that right away because it's going to be necessary when they get a little bit older, and it helps them keep that pinky around. And a lot of them go out for tea and stick the pinkies out when they play. So, yep, and knuckles up. Tell them knuckles up. I should also talk about another thing we do during these hand-to-hand exercises. We set rehearsal expectations. So I will give them cues like sticks up, because drummers just like to play when they're not supposed to. So I sticks up, and then when we're ready to play, we say pizza. And they throw their sticks down, and they've got that perfect wedge of pizza. I always say it's a New York slice, not a Domino slice, big New York slice, a little extra large, 6 to the pizza as opposed to 8. So yeah, that's the way we throw them down, and we get ready to play. Sticks at rest, an inch from the head, okay, whenever possible. And again, just going for the flow and the natural rhythm, like bouncing a ball. That's what we do. So that's how I start to work on technique and work on counting and develop rehearsal technique. And then immediately, as quickly as possible, I go into this thing I developed like 24, 25 years ago called Pieces of 8. Basically, Pieces of 8 means how many different ways can you play eighth notes in one measure of 4. Okay, so I systematically went through and figured this out, okay? The first one, obviously, is straight eighths, where I've got 8 eighth notes. And then the end is 8 eighth rests. So when I wrote it out mathematically, there are literally 256 different versions of or opportunities for that.
Wow.
So once I figured that out, I actually simplified it even more. Instead of just using eighth notes, eighth notes and eighth rests, I used quarter notes and quarter rests too, to simplify it. One thing that really bothers me in a lot of band music is that, percussion, it's a strike instrument, and then there's no sustain. So why would you necessarily write a half note for a snare drum? It doesn't make any sense to me. So, and yes, I know and I appreciate all those different rhythms and everything. But if I can get them to read all 256 rhythms, then it's going to be easy to convert them to whatever the other rhythm is that the composer's asking for. So the easiest way I've done this, and I've taught all of these, basically there's 16 rows and 16 columns of measures. And I set up a check pattern where the kids play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just going right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And then the next measure of this check pattern is a quarter note where they count. They'll still subdivide. They'll go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but just play the downbeats with the right hand. And then they play the check again of eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then they play all the upbeats with the left hand, but they play in the air the right hand. So they literally will count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and then go back into the check pattern again.
I love that. So that's like also setting up the whole idea of like natural sticking.
Yeah, it's natural sticking. It's ensemble playing. It's counting. The counting is the huge thing. I know a lot of people that don't encourage their students to count the rests, but I think counting the rests is actually more important than counting the notes. And making sure that you always have that grouping of 4. And again, in setting this up with beginners, it's really easy because humans, we naturally feel things in 4. And I actually explained that to them by, doing that call and response thing that everybody knows how to do. How do we know how to do that? We haven't been taught it. It just happens, right? So again, we do the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And then we just loop that over and over. And then we apply that to each one of the exercises. So whenever the kids see a rest, either a quarter note rest, which falls on a downbeat, or an eighth rest, which falls on a downbeat, they're going to ghost in the air. And I found that once the kids get the first 3 columns, they get the rest of them in no time at all, just with that simple technique. And once they have that idea, that concept of rhythm, even when it's just like on a triangle or a tambourine and you're playing one-handed, they still get it. I'll still see the kids hold the tambourine with the left hand, playing with the right hand, tapping it and doing the ghost when they need to.
About how long does it take them to get those first couple columns? Like a week, a month, a couple months?
In a lesson, I would say it depends on the size of the group, but I've had kids get through the first 3 in maybe 2 lessons, okay? And then after the first 2 lessons, they're learning a column or 2 each lesson, sometimes 3.
With all these rhythms, are you having them ever write in the counting or, like write stuff out, or are we still all in that like rote before note kind of part of the learning?
I generally have them read because I don't like them to write in counting the same way you wouldn't want kids writing in pitch names or fingerings. So I really want them to not write anything at this point. I just want them to focus on the visual and the hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get where we're going like this deep into the rhythms, and I get why you give out your own method and say we're gonna hang out with this for a while, because I know in the method book I use, it's like the 3rd page and they're introducing accents, and then the next page is flams, and then the next page is all this other stuff, and they're still just counting quarter notes. So I like where you're going with this. I really need to like take this home and meditate on it, and
it's really interesting because once I get that done and once I get 16ths done, then the next thing I do is I'll hand out some kind of a bucket percussion or even a body percussion piece so that we can play something together using 8th notes, 16th notes, and such. Okay. Before we even get into some of the other rudiments, because remember, when percussionists are in a concert situation, which we can talk about soon, they're not all playing the same instrument. They need to know how to play all these other instruments. So I focus on playing some unison stuff really early,
right,
so that they can have that unity. And then only like before the concert, like a month and a half before the concert, we'll start working on music. But because I spent so much time focusing on hands and rhythms and everything, all of a sudden they're able to play whatever I put in front of them rather quickly. So
now that they've got their sort of their basic rhythms under them, you said you put them in maybe a month or a month and a half before the concert, and at this point they're not doing any mallets or melodic instruments yet, correct?
My beginners are not.
Okay, got it. But they are starting to do some of the other auxiliary instruments. We can't have 10 snare drummers all playing snare at the concert. So how do you start to branch out from the snare?
Well, not even the snare, the pad. Or the bucket.
The pad, yes, the pad.
Because the snare is a whole different beast as well. So what we'll do is we'll do exercises where we're playing on our hands like we're playing a tambourine, and we'll play through some actual tambourine music as a group. Or we'll click our sticks like we're playing a triangle, okay? Or we'll do simple roll exercise, single stroke roll exercises like it's a suspended cymbal or a bass drum, one-handed bass exercises. So that's how, and again, I have excerpts that I use with them so that they learn those simple concepts in a unison group fashion. All right, so once we've gotten all of this unison training done, reading rhythms, and then ultimately getting to a bucket piece, then I start talking about dynamics. Okay, we will usually speak through crescendos and decrescendos, just counting them up, counting them down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, and bringing them down, making sure they're nice and even. Okay, I do some really, I've got a couple of great exercises where it's very simple accent versus grace note exercises. We talk about that. When I talk about volume, these kids seem to struggle with the Italian terms. So I generally talk about a dial from 1 to 10, 10 being loud, obviously, as far as volume is concerned, okay? In percussion, you have the ability to also talk about stick heights, okay? I need you to play as quiet as possible. We all know that playing as small as possible is really, really difficult on any instrument. So that's always a concern, trying to get them to play as small as possible. Oh, and that's the other thing about dynamics. I always like to talk about dynamics like a target. Okay, when it's fortissimo or when it's a 10, it's a big target. It's the whole target. But when you're playing pianissimo or at 1 inch or at a 1, okay, it's the center of the target. So I like to talk about dynamics as big and small. I don't necessarily like to use the word loud and soft, because when kids think about soft, they think of almost mumbled and inaudible, right? But we know when we're playing pianissimo, there has to be intent there. So I talk about dynamics as far as size is concerned. Oh, also, when we talk about loud, people are like shouting all the time. And I'm like, no, we want big. We want elephant big, and we want mouse small. Okay? So that's how I get those some quality dynamics out of my kids. And then, second year, I'll introduce Italian terms. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about right away was roll technique, because, again, that all has to do with rhythm, because I generally have my kids pulse their rolls as 16th notes at this level. And one of the things I do is the same exact thing that I did with the beginning, just strokes. I'll do mirror, mirror with buzz strokes. Have them do buzz strokes the same way, and then do individual buzz strokes. 8 together, 8 right, 8 together, 8 left buzz strokes. Slow, really slow, so that it can maximize the buzz. Okay, because again, just trying to get that bounce technique is really important, because it takes a totally different grip.
So what kind of vocabulary do you use to like introduce the buzz? Like, how do you describe what that's supposed to feel like? Like, how do you like, what do you ask them to change and to do to make that happen?
Yeah. So there's 2 different methods that I found work. If it doesn't work one way with one student, it works with another, and vice versa. So you can do 2 different ways. The first thing I like to do is to take a nice tight grip, okay, fingers wrapped around, close to the grip that they were using for normal playing, except I have them grind the sticks into the pad, where they just go a really tight buzz, okay? And then, once they are able to get that, then I tell them to loosen up. Okay, so I go from a tight grip to a loose grip, and then to try to get them to loosen even more, so that the buzz just continues to flow. And once they loosen up and they get a nice buzz, then I tell them to lift a little bit, because sometimes that will help them extend the buzz. Okay, so that's one way. Nice tight grip to a loose. And then the same thing, or the opposite, is actually true too. Sometimes I'll tell them to hold really loose and give me butterfly wings, where all of the other fingers are out and they're just holding the stick with their fulcrum, with their knuckles up. And I say, all right, now just play, and just let them buzz. And they're like, boop, 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 boop. Okay, and I'm like, all right, now just give it a little bit more pressure, so that the buzzes get a little tighter. So you can come at it from both angles, depending on what the kid really understands. So you can start tight and loosen, or start loose and tighten up a little bit.
Rick, when do you find that you start working on some of the more advanced techniques like buzzes and stick heights and things like that?
I would say buzzes happen fairly quickly. I would say, if we're starting in September, easily before the end of October, we're talking about buzzes, because that's a pretty important thing. I want to get everybody moving on. Some people will move to it naturally, and others will take a little bit more time. But it's good to actually put it out there first, because even when you start playing, some kids are getting buzzes because they're holding on too tight and not lifting, not playing out of the head. So you want to try to get them to play out, and then you want to try to get them to play in. So. Nice. Yeah. With rolls I'll have them play. I've got a couple of short roll exercises that I give them, where it's basically, I show them that I'll have them play 1E and a 2, 3E and a 4, and they'll see that on the page, 1E and a 2, 3E and a 4, and then I'll write out 1E and a 2, 3E and a 4. But each of the 16th notes will have Z's in them to indicate buzzes. So then they buzz those 4 strokes with a single tap at the end of the roll. Okay, and they'll see how that's to be played. And then the third measure is actually the roll written in roll form, where it's just a quarter note roll tied to another quarter note for the release. Okay. Yeah, that's really important, because, again, almost at the end of every roll, there's a single note release. And that's always the toughest thing to get the kids to understand. Buzz, 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 tap. Buzz, buzz. I've got this funny exercise, a very simple exercise, but the title is funny. It's called Working 9s to 5s. And it basically, it works the 9-stroke roll first because it's a full quarter note, and then it works 5-stroke rolls with the 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, 4 EN, buzz buzz tap, buzz buzz tap, buzz buzz tap, buzz buzz tap being the 5s. So we focus on 5s and 9s first, and then when they see like maybe a 13, they'll know what that is.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I've got, again, simple 1-page exercises for learning flams, for learning triplets, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Awesome.
I was telling Jen, I was like, I've got this whole packet that I put together that I would love to put on Teachers Pay Teachers, and
nice.
But if you're interested, just email Take a Cue. And Take a Cue will put you in touch with me, and I will if you're interested, I will share some of those. Again,
that's great.
These are all designed for the fall into November, December playing. Okay, and I know a lot of people have December concerts. Some people have January concerts. But this is all introductory stuff first year, just to get them moving quickly. And again, so much faster than any method book you have out there. And the kids really tend to gravitate and get to all of that. Yeah, and what's really funny is that sometimes when we play those method books, I hope I don't get myself in trouble here, but when we play those method book materials, I just completely rewrite all the percussion stuff. And I rewrite the percussion stuff so that if I have 7 players, I write 7 different parts, so that each student knows by that point that they're not a trumpet player as a part of a trumpet section. They're not a clarinetist, a part of the group that plays the same thing. They're a soloist, okay? And what they're playing is really important. And it also helps the balance. How many times have you been to a show where you've seen like 6 kids on a snare drum and going, what are they doing? And then the one kid who can't play snare drum is on bass drum and he's completely out of tempo. He's missing the groove. So I rewrite it so that everybody's got their own part, okay? It's like their own little mini percussion ensemble where they have to listen to each other, where they have the ability. Listen, percussionists don't have to blow into an instrument, so they can count as loud as they want. It will never bother me. I don't care if I hear them screaming through Ode to Joy, just as long as they're in tempo and counting, So, yeah.
Yes.
And while we're on this subject, let me point out to you wind players and brass players that percussion is just as important. You can outfit your entire percussion section for the price of one tenor saxophone. So please buy quality instruments for your percussionists and quality mallets. Okay? I can't tell you how many concerts I've been to where kids are not using the right mallets on the right instrument, and it kills me. One of the things, again, I don't want to get in trouble with any manufacturers, but some of these stick bags that they put together for the kids, for the beginning kids, are not very good. There is one particular brand that puts a pair of yellow mallets into their kits, and the only thing those yellow mallets might be good for are for suspended cymbal rolls. And that's it.
Okay.
I was thinking about the kits that I've seen where the bell mallets are like on wavy pieces of plastic. Like there is such...
That drives me nuts. They like bend and then...
Oh, it's awful.
And they're like 12 inches long, too. They're not even full length.
They're really crazy. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yes. Yes, I know the ones, the gray ones with the little rubber ends. I know exactly the ones you're talking
about.
It's
horrible.
And the ends fly off in the middle of rehearsal and then hit the sax section.
Yep.
Yes.
So, and again, these caddies that they put together for it, while it's great that they have a nice stick bag and they've got 2 pair of supposed keyboard mallets and a pair of timpani mallets, the kids don't need all that the first year. They're just going to lose it. They're going to get their hands all over the timpani mallets and start pulling them apart like they're cotton balls. Just give them the sticks. And I've always been one. And again, in my public school days, I had 2 cabinets that were like wardrobes, and I had them filled to the gills with some of the best percussion equipment out there: tambourines, sleigh bells, vibroslaps, anything you can imagine. I had under lock and key until it was time to actually play that. And even though I had the best equipment available, I actually had some practice stuff too. So like I didn't bring out my Alan Abel $100 triangle all the time. I had the $20 Danmark or model or whatever. There's some pretty good inexpensive stuff out there. There's again, I don't know how we are with promotion, but there's a great company in Philadelphia that specializes in percussion equipment, and I generally buy all kinds of stuff there, and they tend to have some of their own brand stuff, which is pretty good for practice equipment. So yeah, tambourines are a huge pet peeve of mine. Please buy good tambourines. Okay, buy triangle holders that the kids can hold accurately and play, and good triangle beaters. You might be surprised about this.
Yes,
they have really thin ones. They have really thick ones. The best ones, obviously, for beginners and first, second, third year players, do not have the hook at the end, the little round hook. It's a straight beater with a little plastic end where you just get a nice tone from it. So important.
Yes.
Chime mallets, bell mallets, vibraphone mallets. They have Balter Blues for xylophone, which is probably a little hard for elementary. But there are some great hard black rubber mallets. Bells, again, a nice black, maybe a 3/4 inch phenolic is a good mallet. You don't want to use brass mallets. You don't want to use, I'm going to say you don't want to use Lexan. It's got its place, but not in an elementary band. But you find something that cuts through. And again, as a band director, if you're preparing for a concert, just have one of your buddies sit out in the audience and sit and listen for these. And if you can hear the instrument, you're in good shape. If you can't, find something else. Another thing is to put the bells, and I think you guys know this, but put the bells in the back, when possible, because those will cut right through. Put the xylophone or marimba, whatever you might have, towards the front. Even the chimes, put the chimes towards the front of the stage, right? I don't know many beginning bands that do that, but for band directors out there, put the chimes towards the front of the stage, so that people can hear them.
Okay, so this is, I think, a great time to transition over to that mallet part. I want to hear your thoughts on it. When you switch them over, what do we do to get our mallet players, especially if they've already had like all of this snare experience now,
right?
Or pad experience, excuse me. What do we do to get them over? To get them over to mallets, get them excited about mallets.
Oh, mallets are really, really, really cool. And again, it's all about sales. Okay, so the first thing, again, like I said, I never have my kids read music first, okay? I teach them things by rote. I explain things to them so they get the fundamentals and the theory behind it. Now, with keyboards with beginners, I'll usually wait until the spring to introduce it. They don't need to really know the mallets before they know how to play the drums. So we get through all the rhythms, the rolls, the accessories. Okay, and then in the spring, I'll begin to introduce keyboards to them. Now, at this time, you got to figure out where you're getting your keyboards from, right? So you can either have a stock set of 6 keyboards, little bells, in your arsenal of tricks at your school, or figure something out. The kids could rent bell kits if they want. I was never big on making my kids get the stuff because I had enough in the program, so that's where I was.
How do they? This is my question, because I've thought about this. Like, how do they practice then if they don't have the instrument? Like, they want to practice.
That's excellent. So one of the things I did when I was a middle school band director, because my kids came to me not knowing anything, I literally had these little plastic bell kits. You probably know them, okay, that are maybe like the size of a sheet of paper, maybe a legal sheet of paper, that you could buy for like $25. So in school they have access to they had access to full-size keyboards, but at home they could buy just a $25 keyboard, and I really didn't even care if they played on with sticks, just as long as they had a piano, some kind of piano. Now, I would say at least 50% of the kids that were percussionists had some kind of keyboard at the home. Okay, whether it's an electric Casio, I did branding, an electric keyboard or piano. any kind of piano where they could just use the 2-finger method, right? So anything that helps them get by at home is totally fine. And when they come to school, they get to play on some real equipment. Now, for those of you that find those bell kits annoying, I learned a trick. I think it's Steve Graves on Middle School Band Directors on Facebook. He actually tells you to take a piece of masking tape, flip the bells over, put a piece of masking tape along the keys, and that'll take a bunch of those overtones and painful sounds out when you're practicing those instruments. So again, when I introduce the keyboard, and in the spring, like I said, it's usually 1 or 2 lesson classes that I do this. The first thing I do is note identification. Now, after all of my years of trial and error, there's one way of teaching that just works right every time. So the first thing I do is I introduce all the naturals. You don't have to know them. That's just the bottom row. It's the white keys on the piano. And then I say, these are the accidentals, okay? Even though they're listed, as you had noticed, Eric, they sometimes say sharps. They're the sharp keys. I say, these are just the accidentals. There's the sharps and the flats. They're the black keys on the piano. That's all you need to know. And then I say, so what do you notice about the accidentals? And they're like, oh, they're in groups of 2s and 3s. And I'm like, yes, it's right. They alternate between 2s and 3s. I was like, even if you see 2 groups of 2 next to each other, which is generally on the left hand, I was like, one of them is really a group of 3. And they're like, oh, I see, right? So the first thing I do is I introduce the doghouse to them. And the doghouse is the group of 2 accidentals. What's in the doghouse? The dog, the D, right? So that way they have where the D is, okay? A, B, C, D, the middle of the group of 7 notes, right? And then they can figure it out from there where all the other letters are. Okay, if they go down, it's D, C, B. Well, actually, the cat is outside of the doghouse, right, to the left. And the elephant is outside the doghouse to the right. And we come up with different names, and it's quite funny. And the bee is going to sting the cat, and the elephant is going to break the fence, as they moves up. So they start with the D, and they move outward from the D. And then after they learned that, okay, how to find the notes from the D, then I start to talk, and I quiz them about, all right, where can I find an F? And then they can't say it's next to the E or it's next to the G. They have to tell me, according to the accidentals, where the F is. So they'll say, it's to the left of the group of 3. All right, where's a B? Well, a B is to the right of the group of 3. Okay, where's a C? It's to the left of the group of 2. Where's an E? To the right of the group of 2. Where's the D? In the doghouse between the 2. The tricky one is the G and the A. So the G and the A, they go to, the G is to the left of the center of the group of 3. So the 3 black keys, the center key, to the left of that is the G, to the right of that is the A. And you point that out and you say, well, that's the transition. That's going from G to A, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And once the kids identify that, that's great. So then I get right away into scales, and I teach scales visually. I actually give the kids pictures of all of the different scales, so that the keys are blackened in, so that they know what keys to hit. Okay, with my scales, I always tell them to start with the left hand, play steady 8th notes up to the top note on the right hand, and right back down. Do not double the top, because this way it works with natural sticking. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, right? So it gets the flow going from left to right. Now, this is a little tricky, again, because most kids are right-handed, so they always want to try to force the right hand to start, and then there's that flick back and forth where they can't handle. So this starts to work on some of that ambidexterity too. And then we just swap out notes or accidentals for notes when we talk about the other scales. Now, again, scales and playing the keyboard is so visual that it's very different than playing scales on on any other instrument. So I don't mind if they look at the keyboard. I don't mind if they memorize. Okay, I want them to use your ears so that they hear when they play a wrong note. And I want them to adjust. I want them to play the correct sticking all the time. Every sticking and every do is still the left hand. So that's the way I begin with keyboard playing. And I like to think, I tell them, oh man, the keyboard is so great. It's not like a piano. It's like a big drum set. You get to play all these different toms, it's really fun, and you got to sell them on it for a while. But then once they get it, they're like, oh, can I get that keyboard part on this song? Because that's really cool.
I like how you focus on the auditory aspect of it right off the bat, learning their major scales and knowing when they're making mistakes by ear, and then putting that with notation. I think that's great.
Yep. And at the same time, I'm also looking for keyboard technique. For example, when they play naturals, they have to play directly in the center of the key. If they can hit the center of the key when playing accidentals, that's great. On some of the smaller keyboards, you can do that. But when you get to things like the instruments like the xylophone or the marimba, then you got to shoot right for the edges on the front. Again, no nodes. That's where the string goes through, the chord goes through the keys, because you get a really dead sound there. So if you can't hit the center, right on that edge. And another thing they have a problem with on these bells is if they have to play repeated notes, they literally have to get the mallet heads out of the way for the next mallet. So sometime I will teach them to play the left hand high when you ascend, and then when you descend, play with the right hand high. So you kind of, the sticks kind of move evenly, the mallets kind of move evenly up and down the keyboard without getting the mallet heads getting in each other's way. And then I go right into four mallet technique with my begin. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Knock it off.
Nice. I like it.
When they're ready, then I start doing a lot of flashcards, for note names and pitch record. I'll hold up a flashcard and they'll have to play the key, that kind of stuff. And then we work on simple melodies, and I hate to say it, but Ode to Joy is a great melody to learn. A lot of people, especially with snare drumming and drums and accessories, the stands are to be high so you can see the conductor. That's obvious. But with mallet playing, especially with beginners, I like to get that music stand right on top of the keyboard practically.
Yes. Yes.
And that way, at least they can rely on their ears instead of following visually. But I really need to get them to read the music and use their peripheral vision. Because remember, I spent a lot of emphasis on the accidentals. That is how they find their notes peripherally as well when they're reading their music. So again, they're trying to read their music, and if they can see where there's groups of threes and twos are peripherally, then they'll know where that B flat is. They'll know where the F is. Important notes in our literature. So. Yeah.
I'm really glad you talked about stand height. That's something I still tell my 8th graders even now, when they're, especially because even if they're not especially if they're not the most comfortable on the mallets, is put that stand down. I'll yell at the whole band and I'll be like, everybody's stand is too low. You're sitting poorly because your stand's too low. Percussion, put your stands down. That's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's really funny? I wanted to mention this too. So I know a lot of band directors out there, just when they have their band rehearsals, beginning band rehearsals before or after school or whenever, they immediately try to get their percussionists involved. And I don't think that's going to benefit your programs. Okay. I would say might make this suggestion. This is something that I do. For example, I'm preparing now. My after-school rehearsals started in late February and March, and my concert's at the end of May. I'm not bringing my percussionists to my after-school rehearsals until May, because I want no distractions when I'm developing my wind sound. Does that make sense?
I want that. I crave that.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I have no idea how to sell that to the parents.
Do I
just not include them in the emails until February? What do I do?
Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely. Because what I do with my rehearsals before I bring my percussionists in, I don't even rehearse in band on stage. I set up my chairs in a circle. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've got literally 45 chairs in a circle, with their music stands. The kids get to see each other across the circle. They know that they can't hide behind anybody, and that gets them to listen better. Okay, and I'm developing that nice concert band sound, even at the high school level. Okay, I know that the more contemporary music it's using percussion in totally different ways, but I mean the Holst suite, percussionists can sight read that. It's just it's a no-brainer. There's so much music that percussionists can sight read that they don't need to be beating their heads every day. And I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was like, well, what happened when I was in high school back in the 80s? And I remembered, our percussionists were outstanding. 3 or 4 of us marched cadets when we were in high school, okay? And we didn't need to be in the band room all the time. So we were... Back in the day, we could be unsupervised. We went out into this giant practice room in the back, and we were just developing our chops, man. We were not sitting around letting the grass grow underneath our feet. We were out there moving and learning and pushing each other.
Yeah, and Erik, I feel like what you do with your sectional lessons for I forget what you call it, the
small ensemble cycle.
Yeah, your small ensemble lessons sectionals, for a third of the year, a quarter of the year. I feel like that approaches this, and for every instrument in the band. I feel like that's a really cool thing that you guys get to do.
It's awesome. And I always put percussion first. The first marking period is always the percussion class because, there's so many things, especially in 8th grade band, after, 5th year, there's so many details about the way that they need to play things that we just don't have time to do it in lessons. And, it's going to take a long time, but the fact that I see them every day and I can say, okay, we're just going to spend an entire period today on triangle. Okay, we're going to spend an entire period today on tambourine and how to do, thumb rolls and how to play on your knee. Yeah. And this is stuff that they can really use in ensemble. And then when they get in band, they're off and running.
By the way, this is for your listeners, some great novelty pieces through Rolloff.com, the company Rolloff.com. Check them out. Again, things like Fresh Trash is a part of one of their series, which is great, written by Ed Argenziano. Ed has also written some other bucket pieces. Bucket King and Bucket Mania, I think, are a part of another thing. There's Bucket O Rocks, but some great stuff where your kids can play unison. And those are, listen, I still have people coming up to me from that year, Jen, when we played Fresh Trash on garbage cans.
I was there. I was at that concert. That was fun.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Pictures in the paper, the whole 9 yards,
Nice.
So they are thrilled by it. The other thing that was really cool about that percussion class is, we had 25 kids, but what I basically did, because I'm good at carpentry too, instead of having 25 individual pads, I made these, what I called the dance bars, practice pad bars, where they looked like portable dance bars, where the kids do their pliés and everything off of. They are freestanding. I made them so that they could nest together, but each 8-foot bar had 5 pads on it, right? Perfectly spaced out, so that I had all the kids. I made some a little shorter. I made some a little taller to accommodate the different heights of the students. But it was really great. It's so great for working on technique. And again, the high school drum line after that was golden for the next 3 or 4 years. So let me just mention this. Okay, the percussion, a lot of people think the percussion is the heartbeat of the band. I like to think of our bands as like a really good meal. And you've got all of your meats and potatoes and everything. And or not, if you're a vegetarian, you can tofu. My kids are vegetarian. I was a vegetarian anyway. So yeah, your band is a meal, and the percussionists are the spice. The percussionists can make or break the sound of your group. I mean, they really can. If you can't hear them, and if they're just thudding around back there, it's not going to add anything. But you hear a really good percussionist playing some back there, and you're like, whoa, this band is crazy, So choose the right mallets, Get them on good equipment, and again, you can fund your program for for a couple $1,000s. The most expensive thing you'll probably have to buy are cymbals, and really nice orchestral suspended cymbal, okay, that hangs down, not goes up on a stand if possible. If you get one of those, a suspended cymbal like that with those yellow mallets I talked about, and then a good pair of crash cymbals. Obviously, the younger kids are going to need maybe a set of 16s as opposed to 18s, but don't buy. I will warn you, I'm not going to say don't buy, but just be careful and buy the cymbals that sound the best. Now, you don't get to try them out, but every cymbal manufacturer has their cymbal vault where you can go and listen to cymbals, okay?
Yeah.
I had this pair of 18-inch French orchestral cymbals that were just so beautiful. In my private school days, I just bought a pair of nice HHX, maybe AAX, Sabian crash cymbals for orchestral use, okay, not for band use. I mean, yes, they're twice the price, but they're 4 times as good, sounding. And if you take care of your equipment, and that's another thing.
Rick, I don't know if you've seen these, just for folks who might be looking to get some, beef up their percussion. It's Sabian makes these suspended cymbals that I don't want to say they're not recycled, but they're like reused cymbals. Like they take out cymbals to trade shows and then they don't sell them and they bring them back and they sort of like revamp them into suspended cymbals, and they sound beautiful. And they're like 2/3 of the price of a really nice suspended cymbal. So
yeah. So again, an orchestral suspended cymbal will have those enhanced overtones and ring.
Yeah.
Unlike a drum set crash cymbal, which is a short crash.
Yeah.
You don't want to use the short crash. And again, I can't say enough. Get rid of the handles on your cymbals. Use the grips, or use the why can't I think of the name? Yeah, just use the cymbal grips, the straps. Right. Just get them. As a kid was asking me today, how do I handle these? You just grab them like a motorcycle, but then put your thumbs on top, right, and hold the strap tight. And again, here you do need to learn this technique. Crash cymbals, you're not the monkey on the organ grinder, right? You hold whatever your dominant hand is, holds the top cymbal, the lower hand holds the other cymbal. And it holds it steady. You only move one cymbal to make your crash. That's all you need to do. Strong arm plays the crash. Do not use both arms. You're going to get suction. It's going to be awful. So that's my one bit of cymbal technique.
There's our second episode right there. All the auxiliary stuff.
That's it. Buy the good stuff. Teach it right.
Buy the good stuff and lock it away.
Yeah.
That's
well,
good.
Rick, this has been awesome. I know there are a lot of people who are going to really benefit from hearing all this, and really getting their percussion program off the ground. I think that sometimes some teachers are a little bit apprehensive about, diving really deep, and this is going to be a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Thanks for sharing all this with us today.
Absolutely, no problem. And again, if anybody has any questions, they can contact you. You'll put them in touch with me, and off and running.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Well, Jen, thank you so much for lining up Rick to do this with us.
Yep, I did line up Rick today. We've known each other a long time. Rick was my middle school band director. Full disclosure for everybody out there. We've known each other since I was in 6th grade. So this is kind of fun today to hear you talk percussion. So. But, again, if you want to know more, contact us. We'll put you in touch with Rick. And, don't forget, if you enjoyed our episode today, to subscribe to our episodes that come out on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. We're still putting out more episodes in this Starting Off Right series. So there's a lot more to hear.
Yes, and if you like us, don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. It helps other people find us who haven't found out about us yet, and we really appreciate it. It also gets other people to hear about us is when you tell them about us.
Tell your friends. Yep.
Yeah.
tell everybody about us, get the word out there, get them listening. The more the merrier around here. And we love it when you interact with us on social media. Come follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're definitely out there on YouTube. You can see a little bit more about these demonstrations in video format too.
Yeah. Well, Jen, should we have Rick take us out today with our tagline?
Oh, I think we should.
Rick, do you know it yet?
Oh, get out there and make we're at 3, 2, 1. Get out there and make some great music.
There you go.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Love you guys. You guys are the best. I love listening to your show.